Paul Newman is remembered as one of Hollywood's true gentlemen, charming, generous, impossibly handsome, and respected by almost everyone he ever worked with. But behind the bright blue eyes and the iconic cool demeanor was a man who held strong values, strong opinions, and very little patience for people who crossed certain lines. Newman wasn't loud about his grudges. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't explode on set. Instead, his anger was quiet, the kind that froze a room, ended friendships, and ensured he never worked with certain people again. Over the course of his long and legendary career, Paul Newman encountered actors whose behavior, egos, or ethics left wounds he never forgot. Today, we're counting down the 6 Hollywood names that Paul Newman reportedly disliked the most, and the shocking stories behind each feud. By the end, you'll understand that even Hollywood's nicest man had limits. Steve McQueen, the rival Newman never forgave. Paul Newman and Steve McQueen were supposed to be the dream team of the 1970s. 2 icons, 2 legends, 2 men who made cool look effortless. But when they finally worked together on the towering inferno, the truth came out fast. These 2 couldn't stand each other. The drama started before cameras ever rolled. McQueen demanded equal billing, equal lines, equal everything. He even had his agent count the words in the script to make sure Newman didn't get more dialogue. Newman thought it was ridiculous, a grown man worrying about line counts like it was a math test. On set, it got worse. McQueen refused rehearsals. He pushed for changes that put his character in the spotlight. He treated the film like a competition, while Newman treated it like, well, a job. Crew members said you could feel the tension whenever the 2 men were in the same room. McQueen's ego was loud. Newman's annoyance was silent, which somehow made it even stronger. And yet Newman never blew up. He didn't yell or confront McQueen. He simply decided he wanted nothing to do with him ever again. After filming, he never reached out, never mentioned McQueen fondly, and turned down any talk of a reunion project. Hollywood loved their on-screen chemistry. Newman couldn't wait to leave it behind. To him, McQueen wasn't a rival. He was a headache he never wanted to repeat. Robert Shaw, the actor, Newman refused to tolerate. When Paul Newman signed on to The Sting, he had no idea he was about to collide with one of the most difficult actors he would ever work with, Robert Shaw. Brilliant? Absolutely. But easy to work with? Not even close. Shaw had a reputation for being intense, unpredictable, and impossible to control. He drank heavily, argued about everything, and treated every scene like a battlefield. Newman, who valued calm professionalism, was stunned by how chaotic Shaw made the set. One crew member later said Shaw didn't rehearse, he fought. And Newman hated that. Shaw challenged directors, challenged co-stars, and constantly pushed for changes that made scenes louder, harsher, and more aggressive. Newman often stood there quietly watching Shaw tear apart simple moments just to make them bigger than they needed to be. Their worst clash happened during a key confrontation scene. Shaw insisted on adding more physical aggression. Newman shut it down. Shaw exploded, stormed off set, and delayed production for hours. Newman didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His quiet disappointment was sharper than any argument. After filming, Newman praised Shaw's performance publicly, but privately told friends he would never make another film with him again. Newman respected talent, but not chaos. And Robert Shaw brought chaos everywhere he went. For Newman, that was unforgivable. Tom Cruise. The ego Newman never forgot. When Paul Newman worked with Tom Cruise on The Color of Money, Hollywood expected a warm mentor and protege bond. Instead, Newman walked away from the film with a very different impression, one he rarely shared publicly, but never forgot. From day one, Cruise showed up to set like a rocket, loud, energized and desperate to prove he belonged on screen with a legend. Newman respected ambition. What he didn't respect was ego, and Cruise had plenty of it. Crew members noticed it immediately. Cruise bragged about doing his own pool shots, pushed for bigger moments, and treated rehearsals like a competition. Newman, who believed in subtlety and humility, considered it all unnecessary show-boating. One moment became famous among the crew. Cruise performed an extremely risky trick shot again and again, insisting he wanted the world to know it was really him. Newman reportedly shook his head and said quietly, "The audience doesn't need to see you sweat to believe you." To Newman, it wasn't about the shot. It was about attitude. He believed Cruise was more focused on becoming a superstar than becoming a good scene partner. And nothing irritated Newman more than an actor who turned every moment into a spotlight audition. Their relationship never improved. Newman stayed polite, Cruise stayed intense, and the two kept their distance after filming. The movie gave Newman an Oscar, but Cruise left him unimpressed. According to people close to Newman, Cruise became one of the few actors he hoped never to work with again. Bruce Willis, the man who crossed the line. Paul Newman didn't get angry easily, but when someone disrespected him, especially publicly, he never forgot it. That's exactly what happened with Bruce Willis, and it became one of Newman's quietest but most lasting grudges. The story began in the 1980s at a Hollywood charity event. Newman was there to support one of his many philanthropic causes. Willis, still riding the success of Moonlighting and Die Hard, was the new loud personality everyone was talking about. At some point in the evening, Willis reportedly joked about Newman being one of the old guys holding Hollywood back. He even added that the industry needed fresh faces instead of the same legends taking up all the oxygen. People laughed. Newman didn't. He smiled politely, because that's who he was, but those close to him said the look in his eyes changed. Newman wasn't upset about age. He was upset about disrespect. Willis wasn't just mocking a veteran actor. He was mocking an entire generation Newman deeply admired and felt responsible for protecting. After that night, Newman avoided Willis entirely. When asked privately if he'd ever work with him, Newman supposedly answered, "Not a chance." Willis later tried to apologize, but the damage was done. Newman believed in kindness. Willis crossed a line, and Newman never forgave him. Marlon Brando, the clash of two legends. Paul Newman admired many actors, but Marlon Brando was not one of them. Their feud wasn't loud, but it was real. And it started the moment Brando criticized something Newman cared about more than fame: his integrity. The two first crossed paths socially in the 1970s. Newman, already heavily involved in charity work and political activism, was known for using his success to help others. Brando, unpredictable and famously dismissive of Hollywood, didn't hesitate to mock that. At a private gathering, he reportedly joked that actors only pretended to care when cameras were around, a comment that hit Newman like a punch. Newman didn't argue. He simply turned away. But inside, the damage was done. The tension grew whenever they interacted in public. Brando made snide remarks about Newman's clean image, suggesting he was too safe, too polished, too careful. Newman believed the opposite, that discipline and humility were strengths, not weaknesses. What Newman couldn't tolerate was Brando's arrogance, the tantrums, the refusal to memorize lines, the open contempt for the industry. Newman respected Hollywood, the crews, the directors, the work. Brando treated it like a burden. Their feud never exploded. It simmered quietly for decades. Newman avoided working with Brando, avoided speaking about him, and privately felt Brando had no gratitude for the gift he had. For Newman, it wasn't about acting styles. It was about respect. And Brando never gave him any. Frank Sinatra, the friendship that turned ice cold. Most people never knew Paul Newman, and Frank Sinatra had a real falling out. On the surface, they were two legends who moved in the same Hollywood circles for decades, but behind closed doors, Newman carried a grudge against Sinatra that lasted the rest of his life. And it all started with one night that went horribly wrong. In the 1960s, Newman attended a private dinner hosted by mutual friends. Sinatra, already deep into his Rat Pack persona, had been drinking and was in one of his more aggressive moods. Newman, always calm and respectful, expected a relaxed evening. Instead, Sinatra blindsided him. Witnesses say Sinatra mocked Newman's political views, belittled his charity work, and called him soft. He even joked that Newman's activism was just for the cameras, a comment that hit Newman harder than anything else. Newman devoted his life to helping sick children and raising millions for good causes, and Sinatra reduced it to a photo op. Newman stood up, stared at Sinatra for a long, tense moment, and walked out without saying a word. It didn't end there. When Newman later spoke out against the Vietnam War, Sinatra, who supported the opposite side, quietly blacklisted him from certain events and pressured friends to distance themselves. Newman never confronted him again. He didn't need to. He simply erased Sinatra from his life. Those who knew Newman say this was the one feud that truly cut him, and the one he absolutely never forgave. These 6 stories shine a light on a side of Paul Newman the public rarely saw. A man with firm principles, unwavering loyalty, and a low tolerance for ego or disrespect. Behind the polite smile and quiet charm was someone who remembered every slight and carried those private bruises throughout his long career. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these Hollywood feuds surprised you the most? And was Newman right to feel the way he did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into old Hollywood, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our future stories about cinema's greatest legends.